So hello, everyone. I'm Ellen McNulty. I'm the president of Lynott Tours. We're going to be talking about Scotland tonight. You all should be muted. If you're not, please mute yourself. Hopefully you can see my screen and you can hear me. So if you can't, just type something into the chat box. I'll take a look at it and see if I can correct the problem. I have been having a little bit of problem with Zoom this past week. So I hope we don't have too many challenges tonight. Just take a look at the chat box first before we start. Okay. So I don't see anybody else commenting that they can't hear or see me. So I'm going to start the presentation. I'm Ellen McNulty again. I'm president and owner of Lynott Tours. We've been in business since 1970. So that's 52 years. So we're quite proud of that as a small company, specializing only in Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales, to have lasted this long through lots of challenges in 52 years, and of course, including the pandemic. Pandemic now has allowed a lot of things to reopen in England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. You no longer need to isolate. You don't have to take a test on arrival. And I'll explain all of that a little bit later on. So Scotland is open and it's waiting for you to come. So tonight we're going to learn about Scotland. The cow you see there in the background is called a Highland cattle. They're also called hairy coos in Scotland, and you see them up in the highlands in farm areas and things like that. But it's great photo opportunities when you do see them in a farmer's field, and they're very gentle characters. So you can call us at 800-221-2474 if you like. You can visit us on our website. We like to talk to you, though, because we like to know what it is that you want and need. Sometimes that's a little difficult to do just when we're chatting by email or something like that. So sometimes a phone call can just solve all the problems, but we're ready, willing, and able to help you with Scotland. I personally have been to Scotland more than 50 times. Anyone in my office also has been to Scotland, so we have in-person experience. We're not reading from a computer screen or TripAdvisor or something like that. We've actually been there and done that. A little bit of geography first. United Kingdom is England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So that's all the area you see on the right-hand side of your screen. On the left-hand side of your screen, it's only the northern reaches of the island of Ireland. The southern part of Ireland is not part of the British Isles. It's not part of the United Kingdom. So there's no borders between Scotland and England, or Scotland and Wales, or Northern Ireland. There is water, of course, in between Northern Ireland and Scotland, and there are ferries and there are flights across. But tonight we're only going to talk about Scotland. So why is Scotland so special? Well, first of all, the history of Scotland is very closely associated with the United States. I mean, part of our Constitution is from the Scottish Constitution. Of course, you go there for Highland games. You've seen all the games of strength, like tossing the caber, which I call a telephone pole, and things like that. You go to see castles. We have lots of castles, both to stay in and just to visit. We have whiskey distilleries, many of them. In fact, there's one part of Scotland that is just a road with distillery after distillery after distillery that you can visit and sample some of the whiskeys. You want to go out to the islands. The islands, of course, show you the real way of life in Scotland. You take ferries out there. There's only one that's connected by bridge to the mainland of Scotland, which I'll show you in a minute. But it's always interesting to go out to some of the islands. A lot of archaeological sites and things like that there. You can visit St. Andrews. St. Andrews is just north of Edinburgh. It's my favorite town for a number of reasons. I'll explain that in a few minutes. And it's also, Scotland is the location for films, television shows, and books. So you might have seen some of them on the screen, even on the television, things like Outlander, Men in Kilts. So many different shows have been set in Scotland, and of course, a lot of books as well. So you might see competition, Scottish dancing at Highland Games. Now, Scottish dancing is a little different than Irish dancing. Not as Irish dancing is more intense. Let me just phrase it that way. But Scottish dancing is always interesting to see. Here we are with the hairy coos again. Nice to see a whole bunch of them together. And yes, they do need haircuts. That's the way they are. They like looking through all that hair, and the farmers keep them that way. You might want to go on a castle tour. Here we are. This was a private castle, which just one family was staying in. That's me there in the white jacket. But you can do tours of different types of castles from different eras. As I mentioned before, there are ones to stay in, there are ones to visit, there are ruined ones as well. So you have a lot of different options in Scotland. Again, if you have a question, just type it into the chat box. We're going to have an opportunity at the end of the presentation to do some Q&A too, if you have some questions about your own trip or something you want to know about Scotland. I could probably answer it for you. Alnwick Castle, they've restored the gardens there just in the past, I'd say about 15 years ago. It has a wonderful tree house. It's actually a restaurant. It's also the castle itself, and the grounds, not the gardens, are settings for the Harry Potter films, like the Quidditch games. They were filmed there. So it has a lot of reasons to go to Alnwick Castle, which is on the border between England and Scotland. Kelburn Castle, west of Glasgow. Now you can see here that part of this is very gaily painted. Most of the castle looked like the part on the left with that gray sort of stucco cement colored castle. A little bleak looking if it's on a rainy day. So the owner of this castle decided he was going to spice things up a bit, even though this was a heritage listed building and he wasn't supposed to do this. Well, the Heritage Society said, well, you know, if people don't like it, you're going to have to paint it back the way it was. And people love it. You can see it just looks totally different than any other castle that you've seen before. But this castle is just west of Glasgow. So what's special about us? Well, we've been around a long time, and we're not the type of company that does the entire world. We are a company that just specializes in Ireland and Great Britain. And since we've been doing it for over 50 years, I have to say that we know an awful lot about Britain, even if your, let's say, ancestors come from a small town, and you need help looking at the old family homestead, we could probably help you with that. Or if you just want to see general sightseeing places, or you want to explore different areas of Scotland, we've been there, we've done that, we know all about them. We provide great options and choices to best suit your needs. We don't force you to do it our way. We're not trying to put you into a package. You might want a motor coach tour part of the time. Maybe you want to drive yourself around a bit. Maybe you need a driver to take you somewhere, or some people just want to stay in a city and take day trips. We can do all of those. Our website has more than 200 pages. And on the 200 pages, you'll find most of what we do, but not everything. So if you see something on our website and it's not quite what you want, give us a call, and more than likely we can modify it to suit you. We're flexible and we're fast. We don't force you to do it our way. As I mentioned, we listen to what you want to accomplish on your trip, what your budget is. We'd like to talk to you about where you've been before, so we have some idea of what you're looking to do. It's sometimes, I think, in this day and age of the internet, people look at things on, let's say, a hotel website. And of course, the hotelier has written the description of the hotel. And it might not be, you might not share their enthusiasm for the hotel, let's put it that way. But when you talk to somebody who can be objective and has been there and done that, I think that does make all the difference. We've never changed from the way we've done business since 1970. in terms of wanting to talk to the passengers or the travel agent to get a better understanding of the person that we're taking to our destinations. So in Scotland, you have a lot of choices. And by the way, this presentation will last about an hour. I am recording it, and so maybe we can share this afterwards if you've missed part of it, or if you have somebody else you want to give this information to. On our choices for Lynott Tours, we have everything from scheduled tours. Most of them are smaller, where we only have 18 passengers or so. Larger tours, we do have those. If you have a lower price point, we put you on a tour that would have more than 18 passengers on it. You would see the same areas. You'd just be with a larger number of people. That could be 27. It could be up to 50 people. We do day tours. We have them from Edinburgh, from Inverness, from Glasgow. You can combine it with England. We could do lots of different things. Some people like a private tour, especially if you have, let's say, an extended family and you want to have an itinerary that's a bit different than what you see on our website or where you've seen elsewhere. We can customize a private tour for anyone from 2 to 200 guests. You can have a self-drive program if you want to drive yourself around. Remember, we drive on the other side of the road. There's no upper age limit for visitors. You just have to have a valid driver's license in the US or in Canada. And you must bring it with you, of course. We have walking tours, we have golf programs, we pre-arrange tea times and green fees, and we have adventure tours as well. I'm just looking in the chat box if there's anything else that I need to know. So of course, some people like to visit distilleries. You might have your favorite brand of Scotch whiskey. We can probably take you to the distillery. Some of them don't have visitor centers. Some of them either have a very small production or they don't have insurance to cover visitors coming to the distillery itself, but most of them do. Most of the big brands do. So you tell us what your favorite is, we know where it is and how to get there, and we'll send you there. So we can do a walking tour in Scotland. Walking in Scotland is beautiful. It's not all mountains. It's not all extreme hiking. We can walk around the lowlands. We can walk around the base and mountains. We do walking tours that range from 3 days to 7 days if you want a guided tour. So that's great if you want to get out and stretch your legs around Scotland. Remember, a lot of TV, films, and books, as well as songs, come from Scotland. You know that some of the James Bond movies were filmed there. Old Lang Syne was written in Scotland. So that's something we all talk about or sing on New Year's, but that came from Scotland. Robert Louis Stevenson, he wrote Kidnapped in Scotland. So there's a lot of different reasons to go, whether you're interested in films or whether you're interested in literature or whatever. And of course, there are always men in kilts. Now, not all the men in kilts have the sort of elegant kilts with, you know, the pressed pleats and all of that. Some of them are more working men like this, with the wearing the boots, and they're all muddy and stuff like that. But it adds atmosphere to your trip to Scotland. So how do you get there? I put this map on here so you can see the various areas of Scotland and why you might want to visit them. But as far as getting to Scotland, there are flights into Edinburgh and Glasgow from the US. Edinburgh being the capital, you can see that right above the lowlands. It says capital on the right-hand side. Right across from that, in fact, it's only a 45-minute to a 1-hour drive from Edinburgh to Glasgow, is Glasgow. Glasgow's a more industrial city. Edinburgh has more of, most people go to Edinburgh, they don't necessarily visit Glasgow other than flying in there. As I mentioned, they're only a 45 minutes to an hour drive apart, so that it isn't very difficult if you fly into one and out of the other. It's very easy to get from one of the other. We usually look for what the best airfare is to see which one to use. There are also flights to other parts of Scotland, like to Aberdeen and Inverness, from mainland Europe and from Ireland. So if you wanted to, for example, begin your tour up in the Highlands in Inverness, you could do that. A flight lasts about 7 hours, New York to Edinburgh. Of course, we have flights from many other places, but that gives you an idea of how far away it is. It's 7 hours nonstop, or you can connect through London or through Ireland. We can help you with the flights, or you can book them yourself if you have, frequent flyer points or whatever, that can be done. So when do you go to Scotland? Well, any time is good, depending upon what you want, but May and September are my favorite months. August is the busiest when we have the Edinburgh Festival and Military Tattoo. What is Military Tattoo? It is a bagpipe band competition that's held at Edinburgh Castle in August. The Edinburgh Festival is an art festival. There are musical acts. There are all kinds of things going on in August. But as I mentioned, May and September are my favorite months. That's because it's not as crowded as the summertime. Airfare is a little bit lower, probably $100 per person less to go in May and September. The weather is good. Flowers are out in May. So I would prefer those 2 months. But really any time of year you can go. Of course, being at the latitude that Scotland is located at, in the winter time, you would have shorter days of sunlight, just like we have here in the northern part of the United States. So winter, unless you want to sit by a cozy fire or have some whiskey or something like that, I wouldn't necessarily go between November and, let's say, the end of February. If you want some fun, though, New Year's, Hogmanay, is a street party in Edinburgh. The city is closed down completely. The street, you have to pay for an admission to the street. It's kind of like Times Square, but at Times Square, you're not paying an admission fee. At Hogmanay, you're paying admission to the area where they're having the festival, and there's all kinds of entertainment and fireworks and all sorts of things. So what I'm going to talk about tonight are the different areas in Scotland. We're going to be talking about the Whisky Trail. That's where many of the distilleries are. They're all on one winding road up in the Highlands. I'm going to be talking about the Highlands and the Islands. Not all of them, but my favorites. We're going to talk about the Orkneys. Orkneys are at the far north of Scotland. They're islands, and it's where there are a lot of archaeological remains from the Stone Age. Not everybody gets to go up there, but that was one of my favorite places in Scotland. The Isle of Skye, that is the only island that is connected to the mainland of Scotland by a bridge. You can also get there by ferry, but most of the islands are connected by ferry or by flights. And we're also going to do a 7-day tour. So you're going to see what you can accomplish in 7 days. I just realized that you can't see me, so now you can see me. Anyway. First, we're going to talk about the Whisky Trail. We have shorter tours of the Whisky Trail, which is located up by north of Aberdeen. You can see Aberdeen on the right-hand side of the map, and you see all those little distillery symbols in the middle of the map. So there are quite a few distilleries up there on Speyside. When you see the word side after a word, it means that it's beside a river. So Speyside means it's beside the River Spey. So down in England, you might see, for example, Stratford upon Avon. The Avon part means it's a river. and up in Scotland, everything is side. So Speyside is where you find quite a few distilleries. The main town up there is called Elgin, and you'll find a lot of your favorite brands up there, which I will show you in a minute. So we have shorter tours from Edinburgh and Glasgow, as well as Inverness, to discover malt whiskey. You can go to, excuse me, the Cairngorm National Park in Speyside, where you visit Glenfiddich Distillery. It's one of Scotland's most famous brands. I know we have that here in the US and in Canada. Not all the brands of Scottish whiskey are exported to the US and Canada. So some of them might be rare names to you. We have another tour called Speyside Whiskey and Moray Firth. Now, Moray, M-O-R-A-Y, is really the same word in Irish Gaelic, which is Murray, M-U-R-R-A-Y, the last name. So Moray and Murray are the same thing. That's also part of the interesting thing about Scotland and Ireland, even though there are lots of connections in the two countries. In Scotland, you spell whiskey W-H-I-S-K-Y without an E. But if we're talking about Irish whiskey, it has an E in it. We have another tour, which is Loch Lomond and a whiskey distillery. So those are short tours, but we have longer ones as well that go out to the island of Islay. And Islay has a lot of the more famous brands of, or more customized brands of Scotch whiskey. And to be called a single malt whiskey in Scotland, the spirit must spend 3 years in an oak cask to be called single malt whiskey. And what is a single malt versus a blended malt? A single malt means it comes from one distillery. When you see something that is blended, it's blended from a number of different distilleries. So there's quite a difference. I'm sure you know that if you're a whiskey connoisseur. But for me, I was kind of surprised to know that. So this is what the Whisky Trail looks like. You can see it's 20 miles to Glenfiddich. It's 12 miles to Glenlivet. And you can go from distillery to distillery and have a sample, what they call a wee dram. And of course, we don't recommend that you drive this route or that you do have a designated driver. It does make a bit of difference. Sorry. You can even have whiskey and chocolate tasting. I never thought of combining chocolate with whiskey, but it is an interesting thing to do. I'm at that table. You can't really see me, but I'm in the far right corner. But that was an interesting pairing when we went to one of the distilleries. You could visit Dewars. Most of us are familiar with Dewars. That's near Perth. Perth is just north of Edinburgh on the eastern side of Scotland. And every year, an average of 2% is lost through evaporation from a maturing cask. This is known as the angel's share. I mean, even the angels like whiskey. Everything I'm talking about today, I was just looking in the chat box, is miles rather than kilometers. You might want to go to a pub. And the sign of a good pub in Scotland is how many different brands of whiskey they have. Some of them can have up to 400 brands. So that's a sign of, you could pretty much have anything you want when you go into a Scottish pub. And of course, you'll see a few men dressed in kilts, and you'll see other people in regular dress as well. And of course, you can see the northern lights in Scotland. Anything above a certain latitude and longitude, you can see the northern lights, mostly in the wintertime. I know certain countries are very well known for having tours that go there, see the northern lights, but it's definitely something that you can see in Scotland. On way, okay. You take ferries to the islands. There's regular ferry service going out to the islands. It's sort of financed by the government to make sure that people who live on the islands can have a thriving way of life. And so you get the advantage of that in it. One of the main ferry companies is called Caledonian McBrain. And here we are on one ferry that is going beside Duart Castle on Mull. So there's lots of scenic opportunities when you take one of the ferries. Of course, you want to visit Loch Ness. Loch Ness, of course, known for the Loch Ness Monster. It looks kind of calm there on the day that this picture was taken. That is Castle Urquhart. That is the #1 viewing point on Loch Ness. Loch Ness is a very big lake. Loch means lake in Scottish Gaelic. But this is the main viewing point, which you can see is a ruined castle. You might want to visit Cawdor Castle, which is associated with Macbeth. That's up in the highlands up towards Inverness, but that's an interesting thing to do. By the way, we do shore excursions as well. So sometimes you might be on a cruise ship that's making a stop in Inverness, and one of the things that you can see from there is Cawdor Castle. Now we're going to talk about a tour that goes up to the Isle of Skye. A little hard to see here, but on the map, the tour starts in Edinburgh, goes up through the highlands, and then it visits the Isle of Skye. Now, the Isle of Skye, again, is the only island in Scotland that is connected both by a bridge and ferry to the mainland. You pass Eilean Castle, the most photographed castle in Scotland. When I show you the picture, you're going to recognize it. You stay in the cute and colorful town of Portree, where the houses are all pastel colored. You visit the Old Man of Stour, which is a geological rock formation. You can travel to the Isle of Skye, as I mentioned, by both ferry or Skye Bridge. We like to go by ferry in one direction and come back by the bridge, or vice versa. Glencoe is the area just before you get to the Isle of Skye, and that's the scene of one of Ireland's most famous battles and also one of the most famous landscapes. Remember, we've been doing this for an awful long time, so we know pretty much everywhere in Scotland. Here's Skye Bridge, which, by the way, there's no toll on the bridge. So that's one way to get out to the Isle of Skye. And this is Eilean Castle. This is the castle that's right at the entrance to that bridge to go over to the Isle of Skye. And you can tour this castle. There's still people who live in it, but they live in one part of it, and you can visit the rest of it. Our tours on Skye, most of our tours anyway, tend to be rather small. This one here, I don't know, maybe about 10 people on it, but also you can see a very great difference in ages, everything from people in their 20s to people in their 60s and 70s. So we get a great variety of ages on our tours. Old Man of Stour, that's one of the geological formations that you'd visit on the Isle of Skye. Dunvegan Castle, that's home to the MacDonald clan. So we visit that when we're on Skye. And of course, you can do walking on the Isle of Skye as well. Spectacular scenery, great photo opportunities. And here we are in Portree. That's the little town on Skye that I was telling you has all the pastel colored houses. So it's a charming town. Now we're moving on to the Orkneys. The Orkneys are in the far north of Scotland. They're known for archaeology. I mentioned to you this prehistoric settlement there, known for World War II history, because it was at the very top of the British Isles. The Germans tried to invade Britain from up there. And you'll see some of the bunkers and so on that were built there. We also had some Italian prisoners stay there, and they built a chapel, which I think I have a picture of here in this presentation. But there's wonderful scenery up there, great bird life, a lot of shore birds, of course. And you can get there by ferry from the north of Scotland, or you can fly there. It's not something that you can include on a quick trip around Scotland. You're going to have to allow at least 2 days up there. So if you're only in Scotland for a week, you won't be able to get up to the Orkneys. But, you know, if you have a little bit more time, I think that's a great thing. An ideal tour of Scotland, if you ask me, is about 10 to 14 days. And I know most people don't take vacations that long, but that is what I would devote to Scotland, because there's so many interesting places to see. There's not a lot of highways, you know, you're going on rural roads. You might come across a bunch of sheep in the middle of nowhere. So that's going to slow you down a bit, which you should do when you're on vacation anyway. So here we are at prehistoric Orkney at Skye Bridge. This is a complete Stone Age house. You can see, I don't know if you can see it, but they have stone beds, they have stone tables, everything you can imagine made out of stone. This was right by the water, and it was completely covered by soil and by grass. And one day somebody discovered something sticking up out of the soil, and they dug down and they found this complete house from prehistoric times intact there. I think Orkney is one of the most interesting places in Scotland. I went to a museum there, and I'm from New York. You know, you go to the Metropolitan Museum, everything is behind glass, and there are like tripwires everywhere. You don't get too close to things. I went into this museum, and a woman took a skull out of a drawer and she handed it to me. And she goes, "This is one of my ancestors." So it's that kind of folksy, informal place in Scotland in general, but particularly in Orkney. The Ring of Brodgar, that's a ring like Stonehenge. In fact, there are more henges in Scotland than there are in the rest of the British Isles. This one is the Ring of Brodgar, and it's up in Orkney. World War II history, this is Scapa Flow. During World War II, as I mentioned, this was to stop the Germans from invading. Those are all, you know, cement and rock in the water there to stop them from coming in. Here's more standing stones in Orkney. If you watch Outlander, you know that at the beginning of the show, she touches one of the ancient stones, not these particular ones, on Orkney, and that's how she sort of does time travel. So it has very romantic associations to going to some of the standing stones. Of course, our favorite bird, the puffin, a shorebird that you'll see throughout Scotland. So that's the Orkneys. We're now going on our 7-day tour of Scotland. This is sort of putting everything together so you can see just how much you can and cannot accomplish in a week. Let's just look at where we're going. If you look at the letter A on the right-hand side, lower right-hand side of the map, we're starting in Edinburgh. That's the capital city. We're going up to St. Andrews, the home of golf, through Dundee and Perth. We're not making it over to Aberdeen, but we're going up to Inverness, through the highlands up to Inverness. Inverness is considered to be the capital of the Highlands. We're going out to Portree, Isle of Skye. We're coming back into Fort William. Fort William is where the Harry Potter train is. You've seen that in the movie. And of course, it was a train well before the Harry Potter films were made. It's really called the Jacobite, but it became the Harry Potter train once the films came out. That's at letter E in Fort William. That's also right around Glencoe, the area for one of the famous battles in Scotland. You'll go back down through Loch Lomond and the Trossachs. That's like a national park area, and out of Glasgow. So this would give you what you can do in about 7 days in Scotland. Now, where Glasgow and Edinburgh are, we're still not at the bottom of Scotland or the border area. That's a good few miles south of Edinburgh and Glasgow, down to the border with England. There's no formal border. It's like going from state to state here in the US. You wouldn't know that you've crossed over other than there is a sign that says you're now in Scotland or you're now in England or whatever. So I find going on a tour, a small tour, one of the best ways to get around Scotland. We have a tour called the Scottish Clan, and it was originally designed for families because it has a mix of activities, things for 3 generations of needs, everything from kids to older adults, who might enjoy history or castles. When we go to castles for kids, we might send them on a treasure hunt around the castle, whereas, the older adults might want to know about the history of the property. Excuse me. We're visiting St. Andrews, the home of golf. We're going to hunt for the Loch Ness Monster. Everybody likes to do that, regardless of your age. We're going to ride the Harry Potter train, and we're going to go to Braveheart country. I'm sure most of you have seen the Mel Gibson film, Braveheart. We're starting in Edinburgh and we're ending in Glasgow. So we have activities for children. As I mentioned, they can dress up in costume in certain places. They have a lot of fun. I think it's nice when you can have a multi-generation trip and everybody enjoy themselves. The kids are not annoying everybody else on the bus because they're tired or they're not interested. This works well for families, but it also works well for just the average adult. This would be the type of coach we use: Mercedes mini coaches, 18 seats, reclining seats, air conditioning. Nice thing is you have a driver guide, one person with just 18 people on the bus. You all get to know one another. It's a more personalized tour. The driver will get to know your name. You won't feel guilty if you say you want to stop to take pictures. I know sometimes you go on a big bus with 50 people and 50 people want to stop in different places to take pictures. In this case, it's very easy for the driver to pull over to the side of the road. He doesn't have to look for a particular parking spot. This is not that much bigger than, let's say, a minivan in size. So he can pull right over to the side of the road so you can take a picture. Also much nicer, I think, to have a fewer number of people on the tour when you make a rest stop or you go shopping. There's always somebody on a big bus who doesn't come back on time and everybody else is just sitting there waiting for them. Well, you don't find that on a small tour because you get to know everybody and everybody is more well-behaved, let's say. We start in Edinburgh, which is the medieval capital. On the left, you see Greyfriars Bobby. Now, Greyfriars Bobby, Greyfriars is an area of Edinburgh, Bobby, of course, being the policeman, and this was the policeman's dog. He used to follow the policeman around on his rounds. When the policeman died, the dog sat on the policeman's grave and wouldn't move from there. So when the dog, in fact, died, they did a statue to Greyfriars Bobby, and that is still there. On the upper right, you'll see Edinburgh Castle when it's decorated for tattoo. That is the military band competition that I talked about before. It's the highlight of the August season in Scotland. When I first heard about going to a bagpipe competition, I thought, oh God, that sounds awful. But I went and it was one of the most rousing things I had ever done. So I thought that that was a great thing. Now, I'm hoping you can't see what just appeared on my screen. Well, anyway, that's all of my presentations at one time. Okay. There it goes. It went away. Edinburgh, the streets, it's very hilly in Edinburgh. Streets are all cobblestones. You have to be in fairly good shape to walk around Edinburgh. We go up to the fishing villages of Fife. Remember, Scotland is surrounded by water, so we have a lot of little seaports and fishing villages. Fife is a county. It's just north of Edinburgh. St. Andrews, I've mentioned that before. St. Andrews is not only the home of golf, it's the home of St. Andrews University. That's where William and Catherine met. It is also a very quaint town with quaint shops and older buildings. There's a ruined abbey, there's a cathedral, but the town is, of course, dominated by golf courses. When you want to play golf at St. Andrews, the golf courses are owned by the people in the town, which means that if you live in St. Andrews, you have the right to play. They don't play golf on Sundays. If you want a tee time, we can arrange that for you. There's two ways of doing it: paying a lot of money and booking way in advance. And of course, you have to have a low enough handicap, which is 24 for men. But the better way to do it is to go into the ballot. The ballot is where you stay in town the night before play. We take the names of everybody who wants to play the following day for any available spots that the locals are not taking. Your name goes into the ballot and your name is pulled. You will get to golf on the old course. However, there are 7 golf courses in town. The new course, let's say the old course is 400 years old. The new course is 300 years old. So you are still going to play on a historic course, even if you don't get to play on the old course. But the majority of people do get to play. This is the Old Course Hotel and Golf Course in St. Andrews. This hotel is owned by the Kohler Plumbing Company. You know, the ones who make the bathroom fixtures here in the US. The gentleman who owns that company owns this and quite a bit of St. Andrews. So this is the place to stay. This is a 5-star hotel, has a spa, it has all kinds of things. And they have their own private golf course as well, which is called Duke's, but it is right on the old course. Our small group tours can be as few as 3 or 4 people. Most of the time they're 10 to 16 people. Our drivers all dress in a kilt and their traditional tartan, whatever their family tartan is. And of course, they don't drink and drive. He is holding a bottle of whiskey. However, they don't drink and drive, but he brings that along so that you can taste the different whiskeys. He brings different ones with him. He also has a little Scottish Terrier, which he brings one day on the tour. If people aren't allergic to dogs, he'll bring the Scottish Terrier just so you can see his little puppy. Here's the ruined cathedral in St. Andrews. On this tour, we also stay in a castle. Now, this is a privately owned castle just north of St. Andrews. It's called Ferny. You can see it's very atmospheric. At dinner, we have a piper play, so that's always a nice thing to do. And you meet the laird. The laird, L-A-I-R-D, is the owner of the castle, or the clan chief of the castle. We're going to Loch Ness on our 7-day tour. This is Castle Urquhart, again, the best viewing place for Loch Ness Monster. I told you before about whiskey versus whiskey, the different spelling. So this is just some of the famous brands that are Scottish whiskey. Jacobite steam train, it's better known as the Hogwarts Express. That's the Harry Potter train. We go on that around Fort William. It goes one way towards the Isle of Skye. We take the ferry across to Skye and we come back on our coach across the Skye Bridge. Of course, there are rainbows everywhere. It does rain occasionally in Scotland, so you will have some rainbows, but this is Glencoe, the site of a famous battle. And they say that you can still hear the soldiers' cries from the massacre that took place here. So one of the advantages of going on an escorted tour is that you have a smaller guided tour with no more than 18 people on board with Lynott Tours. Nice congenial group of people, unique experiences, private tours to places seldom seen. As I was mentioning, it's easier to get up close and personal with the smaller coach rather than a large 50-seater coach, which has to look for parking and things like that. You can visit your favorite places and our hidden gems. We go where the big coaches can't. We're able to visit out-of-the-way places and see memorable sites off the beaten path. A local driver guide will always know the best way to get around. He's spent a lifetime traveling the road less traveled. That's great to have a local driver. They'll know, for example, if there's traffic or it's a particular day of the week and there's a market on in a particular town or something to avoid, or maybe something to add to the tour. If there's something special going on that he might know about, you can visit there as well. Here's a little quirky fact. The only private army in Europe is in Scotland, and this is at Inverary Castle, which is on the western side of Scotland, and that is the only place he has his whole own army, the gentleman who owns Inverary. Stirling Castle, one of my favorite places. Stirling Castle is just north of Glasgow. On any day, you'll have costumed characters there, so they're great for selfies and just for the atmosphere in the castle. They have a tapestry workshop, so you can see how tapestries are made. You could easily spend half a day or more at Stirling Castle. It's just a very interesting place. Of course, you want to try local food. We try to give you a taste of some of the local food. Here we are at Glamis Castle, where they make their own homemade scones. And of course, nothing is complete in Scotland without going to a pub. This is the smallest pub in Glasgow, and that's me. Here we have one of our drivers, Graham, with his Scottish Terrier. And we're just going to talk about self-drive. Now, self-drive is one of the most popular ways to go around Scotland, where you can choose your route. You're driving on the other side of the road. We have every type of vehicle, from a two-door standard shift car on up to miниbuses. So we like to match the car to the driver. Remember, though, that some of the rural roads are a little narrower than you might be accustomed to here. So you don't want the large Hummer when you're driving down some country road, because no one will be able to pass you in the opposite direction. So you want a smaller car, nothing larger than a mid-size, unless you have, 6 or 7 people, in which case you need a minibus. I know we're all accustomed to driving SUVs and bigger cars here, but I don't necessarily recommend that there if you're going out into the countryside. We can make an itinerary for you that's unique and tailored, custom to exactly what you want. You can stay in manor houses, you could stay in mansions, country house B&Bs. We have several hundred B&Bs in Scotland. You can even stay on a working farm if you want to do that. And of course, everyone wants to stay in a castle. We have all the modern comforts in centuries-old castles. They've all been brought up to date, and they're luxurious places to stay. So you might want to do at least one night in a castle. When you're on a self-drive, you're discovering the road less traveled, and you're able to, as I said, to rent any type of car, from a two-door car to a minibus. One of the things you want to make sure of when you drive is that you take out super CDW. What is CDW? It is called collision damage waiver. It's the same thing as collision on your car here in the US. You would never drive around here without some type of coverage on your car. Well, you certainly shouldn't be driving in another country on the other side of the road without collision. And so you can take out just regular collision, which has a deductible, just like it would here. But if you take out super CDW, that gives you a very reduced deductible. And, very few people actually have use of super CDW. Most people are good drivers. However, if you do get in an accident, you want to make sure you're covered. And that's why we suggest super CDW. One of the hotels we use, the Isle of Skye Hotel, beautiful settings. It's not a castle, but it does look like one. Dalhousie, that's the oldest inhabited castle in Scotland. It's just outside of Edinburgh. We use that on some of our tours as well, but I think it adds a nice end to a tour if you're ending your tour in Edinburgh, or beginning your tour as well. They say it's haunted, but then most buildings, they say that about anyway, if they're older. Last thing I think we're talking about today is our private guided tours. That's where you have a driver guide taking you around. You don't have to worry about driving on the other side of the road. It's someone who's a local. You can ask them a question. What type of tree is that over there? How much do people make? What would that house cost over there? Those things that you want to know when you're driving yourself around. And of course, you're not arguing with your partner over which way to go. The driver will know exactly where to go and where to take you. You can attend special events like Highland Games, or visit special places of interest if you have a driver guide. And he's there to provide personalized attention to every detail while you're on the tour. You just sit back and relax and let us turn dreams into reality. Might have a family tour. We do some weddings in Scotland. Sometimes it can be a vow renewal. It can be an opportunity when multi-generations of family, grandparents, parents, and the kids all take time off from their busy life to travel together. So that's always a nice thing to do. We do quite a few of those. This was a wedding in Scotland. And of course, Outlander. On our Outlander tours, we actually have a tour guide who looks like Jamie. So that adds lots of atmosphere to the tour. Fresh seafood. Of course, Scotland is surrounded by water, so you have lots of lobster, you have lots of fish, all kinds of seafood, and of course, local specialties. You might want to visit the Willow Tea Rooms. That was designed by Charles Rennie Mackintosh, who's one of the main founders of the Art Deco movement. So that's the Willow Tea Rooms. They're located in Glasgow, as is the school where Rennie Mackintosh learned his craft and taught as well. And of course, no meal is complete in Scotland without sticky toffee pudding, which is a local delicacy that you have to try at least once when you're in Scotland. It's delicious. So we have tours pricing on our website for 2022 and 2023. If you don't see what you want on our website, of course, you just give us a call. Here's an idea for New Year's, Hogmanay. You can see that they're all out in their shorts and everything else on New Year's, so it isn't cold. But it's the time of year that, if you want to have a wild time in Edinburgh, it's certainly possible on Hogmanay. So just to review what we talked about tonight, we visited the Isle of Skye, the island accessible by bridge and ferry. It's the home to legendary clans, Eilean Donan Castle, and the Old Man of Stour. The Whisky Trail, which is up in the northeastern part of Scotland. There's 100 active distilleries in Scotland, spread across 5 regions, but many of them are on the Whisky Trail. And whiskey in Scotland is called the water of life, so everybody drinks whiskey. St. Andrews, known not only as the home of golf, but where William and Kate met, cobbled streets, narrow alleys, a castle, and a now ruined cathedral. We visited the Orkneys. It's an island in the far north of Scotland that has the archaeological ruins. So some of the other webinars we do are on England or on Ireland. We do one for Northern Ireland, the Chelsea Flower Show, which takes place in, the show itself takes place in May in London. It didn't, of course, take place last year, but we have quite a few tours going over for this year's tour in May. We do shore excursions, and those are all covered by different webinars that we do. Now, if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box, or you can unmute yourselves and you can ask a question. I just want to remind you of what's needed to travel now. They've changed all the rules with COVID. You need a passport that's valid for 3 months past your return date. There is no pre-trip testing or quarantine. You don't have to do that when you get to Scotland. The only requirement is that when you're returning home, and this is a US rule, it is not a rule for a foreign country, is that you get a COVID test. I think it's 3 days before you board a flight. That's what the rules are today. As you know, throughout COVID, the rules change many times. Sometimes they change every 10 days, but this is what's required at the moment. So it's easy to travel to Scotland, lots of availability, lots of flights, great possibilities to go there now. So if you want to book with us, it's easy. We answer the phone when you call. You talk to a human. We don't have a call director that says, press 1 for this, press 2 for that. You get a person who actually knows what they're talking about answering the phone. We have quick turnaround. When you ask for a quote, you'll get it within 24 hours. We understand how important your vacation is to you, and of course you are to us. So you just give us a call and we're happy to help you with anything that you need. So I'm just going to take a look in the chat box and